Everybody, welcome into Going Public. I am Harry McCullough. We'll be talking with the Terrebonne Port Commission, Mr. David Rabelais, today on this edition of Going Public. So, David, how you doing, man? What's the latest on updates?
I'm doing good, Harry. I'm doing good. We're going to go over the H&C maintenance dredging today, both north of Cocodrie as well as in Terrebonne Bay. We're going to discuss the H&C deepening. We're going to talk a little bit about Washington, D.C. and what's going on over there right now. We're going to also discuss the upcoming opportunities with wind energy. And we're also going to touch on the low water in the Mississippi River. Because with the lack of rain and the drought that we've been in, it's causing some issues there. Not here yet, but you never know. If it continues, it'll cause us problems too down the road. So.
Yeah, I've been reading, a lot about that you see with the Mississippi. So the HNC doesn't have the same kind of water coming through it that the Mississippi might. Because of the drought, we don't have the same lower numbers.
We do have, but we have less of a change right now than they're experiencing. The river's so wide and so long. If you get rain in Chicago or whatever, or St. Louis, it takes a few days before that rain comes all the way down.
Right.
In our area, we only have a 36-mile channel. It's a lot narrower. Our water mainly comes from the intercoastal and off of the Atchafalaya, which is fed by the Mississippi.
Right.
But in that transition, we don't fight those water levels now as bad as we do. As bad as the Mississippi River, okay?
Yeah.
But we still have issues with the water levels. I mean, we still have to monitor and we still have to dredge, okay?
Right.
But as far as the water levels here, they pretty much stay closer to normal than up there.
Do we have the same kind of saltwater intrusion that I know they're dealing with in Mississippi right now?
Yes, and that's why when we decided, like right now, on the Omaha Navigation Canal, they have the Bubba Dove floodgate. It's a barge. But the ultimate plan is to have a lock and a floodgate, because we do have several months out of the year where we get salt water coming north. And when you have a drought, that's what happens. The salt water comes further north. So those are the times when you would operate the lock to keep the salinity down, come to Houma.
Right.
Okay. Because that's where our fresh
Freshen it
water.
up, right.
That's where our fresh water comes from. So that's what a lock does.
Very interesting. And to see what they've done on the Mississippi to put that sill on the bottom of it.
Yes.
And you say that actually affects the depth, right?
Yeah, it's an earthen sill. It's like a levee underwater. And what happens is salt water comes in as slugs and it's heavier, and it comes along the bottom. And when it hits that levee, let's say it's a 2 or 3 foot high levee, it actually curves upwards and the current pushes it back out. So that's just a little trick that they learn along, and they installed that because of the drought, because that's when the salt water comes back in, and then after that cycle goes away and they start getting more water, they'll get rid of it, and you won't have to deal with it as much.
Right, but again, it's a depth issue.
It's a depth controlling factor.
Yeah. So, well, it's always interesting.
Yeah.
So, give us an update on the maintenance dredging north of Cocodrie.
All right. So the Corps bid out the maintenance dredging north of Cocodrie. Actually, they put a project out in 2020, okay, and they just leave it out, and because the dimensions of the channel don't change. The only thing that changes is the areas that they have to dredge and how much they have to dredge. So in September, they issued an addendum to that bid, to that contract, which initiated the bids. And with that addendum, they sent in the depths of where they want them to dredge and all that stuff. So the contract was awarded September 28th for $4,963,900, just shy of $5 million, to Apollo Environmental Strategies Incorporated. And the contract includes removing 515,000 cubic yards of material from mile marker 35.5, which is right at the intercoastal, down to mile 20. And it's non-continuous, which means they're going to spot dredge. They'll dredge an area that's deficient, and then they'll pick up, move, and go further down, dredge another area. Or they might do it from the south coming north. They haven't discussed where they're going to start. But the maintenance is going to be 17 feet dredging depth by 150 in width. And the reason they go 17, it's a 15-foot authorized channel, but they allow you, they call it advanced maintenance. They allow you an additional 2 or 3 feet when you dredge, so that it'll last longer, so to speak. The contract duration is going to be 150 days. The performance period, that 150 days, started on October 11th. The contractor received the notice to proceed that date, and then the project contract should be completed within by March 11th, 2023.
Now, David, as you talk about 17 feet and you talk about north of Cocodrie, would when you dredge to 17 feet in this upward part of the canal, does that stay longer than stuff down in open water?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the sediment and the siltation that we experience here in Terrebonne doesn't come from north to south. It's in the bay, mostly east to west. But occasionally, we had Hurricane Ida, which came. We had a north wind for 4 hours. Okay, so it built up on behind the locks and floodgates. That's why we had some of them damaged, because they weren't accustomed to that type of storm surge. We usually have a storm surge from the south. This one was from the north, and it carried a lot of sediment with it. So that's why we have in these areas where it's kind of shoaled up a little bit. Once we dredge them out, I've been port director since 2006, and we've never dredged north of Cocodrie since I've been port director. So that tells you that that it doesn't silt in very often, but when you have a hurricane like we did, it does. So fortunately, we had been planning for several years just to kind of go and clean little areas out, and after this hurricane, it kind of, it got to where we needed to do it. So the contractor intends to collect survey data within the next couple of weeks. The pre-construction conference is expected next week, and the dredge and equipment should arrive within the next 2 to 3 weeks. The bay and bar, which they call right at the end, close to the Gulf, look good. The surveys were from March of 2022, and it's so far we're good there, because we didn't have any hurricanes coming from the south that affected the channel.
Right,
okay, the only one we had was a north wind. So the funding was carried over. 5.4 million from last year's funding, which is a combination of the regular funding and a supplemental funding that we had from previous hurricanes. This mainly due to competitive bids, because they did a real good job, and they got less than 5 million. We thought it was going to be more like 7, so that was a really good deal, and it left us with 5.4 million left, and we expect an additional 3.5 million to come in the next work plan, which will be probably after the election, and once they get back into the swing of things, they're going to come out with a work plan with the president's budget, and we're expecting to get 3.5 million for fiscal year 23 funding, which is the president's budget. But Congress has not yet passed funding legislation for 23. So all inclusive, we expecting to get about 8.9 million for this coming year, this coming summer, and probably August, September timeframe. We'll be out there dredging this summer, barring any kind of storms.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that goes by pretty quick. Once that work starts.
Yes. Yeah. It'll take them. 9 million probably take them about 3 or 4 months,
It's good work.
But they'll be finished. They'll be finished before Christmas,
Yeah.
They have to. You remember we had that problem with Santa Claus trying to land in the channel, and we need all the depth we can get. I heard he's been eating a lot since COVID and stuff, so we got to get him in there.
That's one of the factors for COVID.
That's
You
right.
better watch his weight.
That's right.
Yeah. So a couple minutes left, though, but the agency deepening process, so that continues.
Yes, and basically, going over the same stuff, but I just kind of want to remind. So we have money that's been sent to the Corps from the federal government to get them engaged, and they're responsible for the design of the project. And we have to keep that train running. So hopefully, when we get this president's budget and this work plan, and we get our maintenance dredging money, we also get some money to continue that process in New Orleans, at the New Orleans district. We're just gonna do the best we can with what we get. It's all pending the funding. When the funding stops, the schedule stops. The state has stepped in, like very good. Our delegation is awesome. And they budgeted $40.5 million to pay for the pipeline relocations. We received 20 this year, and we hopefully receive another 20 next year. However, this is all based on the study budgets, okay, which was done for the last 10 years. So they don't compensate for inflation. They don't compensate for anything. So the costs are going to go up. And the money, the budgets, which I'll talk about probably in our next session,
right.
Are going to go up because we're using some 2016 to 18 budget numbers that the Corps came up with.
Which is amazing, right? I mean, if costs ever come down, I mean, Morgan's to the Gulf when they first started, it took 25 years.
They take so long.
Right?
They take so long. Like you sit down with them and say, I need $10 million. Why do you need it? Well, I want to do this. Okay, well, they study it for 3 or 4 years.
Right,
then they finally come back and say, okay, I'll give you your $10 million. Well, guess what?
I need 20 now.
Yeah, it's just the way the government works. So.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll continue talking right here with David Ravelay on Going Public. Stay with us.
Led by a 7-member commission, the Terrebonne Port was created to assist our local industry in promoting economic development. We monitor government regulations that affect our local industry and work with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to secure maintenance dredging funds. Because the HNC is the main artery for the heartbeat of Terrebonne's economy, Terrebonne Port fights a constant battle for funding to maintain the federally authorized navigable depth. We are now leasing waterfront and non-waterfront property. Terrebonne Port Commission, serving our industry to keep Terrebonne thriving.
Structural heart disease refers to a defect in the heart's valves, walls, or chambers that keeps the heart from pumping blood properly. Valve or structural heart problems may be present at birth or develop over time. Your risk increases if you have high blood pressure, plaque buildup, history of heart attack, take certain medications, or have certain heart infections. The Structural Heart Program at CIS and Terrebonne General provides innovative solutions and devices with the latest technology to bring the best possible outcomes for patients. Learn more at cardio.com.
In South Louisiana, storms are a way of life. Every storm poses a different threat, whether from flooding or hurricane-force winds. At All South Consulting Engineers, we help protect our people from these disasters. Before a storm, we work with our leaders to prevent catastrophic damage. After the storm, we help get the resources needed for rebuilding. We have helped our cities, parishes, and school boards recover over $2 billion to rebuild our community. We'll be here for the next one.
A new company with a lot of history. GIS Engineering has rapidly grown its brand around an experienced team of professionals. GIS Engineering is a full-service planning, engineering, procurement, and construction management company specializing in coastal protection and restoration, upstream and downstream industrial, and transportation infrastructure projects. Putting people first, GIS Engineering, a new company with a lot of history.
Everybody, welcome back to Going Public. Harry McCullough here. We're speaking with David Ravelay, the Executive Director of the Terrebonne Port Commission. So we were talking about the agency and the process. We're in the process of the deepening, right?
That's correct. And so, like I said, the state of Louisiana funds part of it because there's a local match portion, which I'll explain in a little bit, but they stepped up like nobody's bid. They did a good job. So we're sitting with 20 million this year, another 20 million coming next year. But like we started to discuss, the Corps studies these things so long, and they come up with a budget, and I think their budget was done in 2016, 2018. We finally got the study authorized in 2020. Now we're in 2023, going into 23, and the costs have gone way up. I mean, we in 15% of inflation right now. So
sure.
anyway, GIS Engineering has been working on the deepening. They're doing the utility relocations or pipeline relocations, and so they had to go out and identify all the pipelines, survey them, find them, make sure, just determine whether they were live or dead or whatever, and get with the oil companies. And so we're in that process right now. Letters are being sent to the various pipeline companies to set up meetings to discuss these requirements, because they actually lower it. We tell them they need to lower it. They get out there and they lower it. We got to pay for it. So and so these meetings are starting to take place. We also meeting with the Corps to determine whether we're grandfathered in on depth of cover on some and not on others. So they have to make a decision on how deep we have to put them. So they're also working on real estate, which is the areas that we're going to use to put the spoil material when we dredge. They're developing maps, and they also have to go and research oyster leases, because that's important as well. And we need to make sure that we address all of that. So we're doing that. We also have we also trying to handle the cost of the agency deepening, like I said, with the state and the federal government. But the study came out with a cost estimate of $255 million in 2016-2018 timeframe, and that cost is broken down as the federal share, the non-federal share, and the local obligation share. And I know you like this part, Harry, because the local obligation share is not a LOS. It's LERDS, LERRDS, which stands for land easements, right-of-ways, relocations, and disposal areas.
That's right.
So the federal share is $177 million, and the non-federal share is $78 million, based on their $255 million estimate. Okay, now we're looking at all of these pipeline lowerings, and they're going up in the millions. So all we can do is do it as quick as we can, so it doesn't keep going up. That's my story, and I stick to it. The benefits of the project, we discussed this previously. Morgan's, just for an example, it's a cost to benefit ratio. It's how much you're going to spend and what are the benefits you're going to get out of that money that you spent. The cost to benefit ratio for the Morganza to the Gulf is 1.5 to 1. So every dollar you spend on the cost of it, you get $1.5 in benefit, $1.50 in benefits, okay? And keep in mind, this system protects tens of thousands of homes and businesses plus lives, okay? From flooding. And now, if you go to the core study for the deepening, only going down 5 additional feet from 15 to 20, the BC ratio is over 4 to 1. So for every dollar we spend, every dollar we spend, we're going to get over $4 in return. So it speaks volumes. So why they took so long? We've been needing this forever. Our industry is dying for it, and we got to get it. And it's just going to enhance our economy by 4 times. That's what that really means, okay, in my book. Or 4 times the amount of money that we normally earn off of the home and nav, we're gonna earn after it's dredged and deepened.
Well, especially if we start building jackets for wind turbines and that kind of stuff,
That's right.
Those are big things that need to move up and down a deep water canal.
That's right. So, and our goal is to start the deepening construction when the lock complex is completed, the lock and floodgate. And I have 2025, but I think it's going to go into 2026 before they're completed. And we can't dig anything as far as dredging until the lock and floodgate is operable. And so that's why we're jumping on these pipelines now, try to get all of this done and get it all out of the way. And hopefully when they open the lock and floodgate, we can have contractors ready to start digging. So that's our goal.
Hey, you deal a lot with Washington, D.C., for sure. But right now in Washington, D.C., everybody's worried about the November elections. What's going on? Does that affect what you guys are doing when they have elections like this?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of puts a stop to everything going on in Washington that we depend on. And hopefully we get everything that we need prior to it, because it's kind of shuts down with all of this. But the expectation is the House of Representatives will flip control from Democrat to Republican. And if that happens, the leadership under the House Republican majority will be Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who's a minority speaker right now, and then majority leader Steve Scalise. Okay, so he's going to be the second most
He's
powerful
whip,
man in Congress. No, the whip will be determined. Steve used to be the whip.
Right.
Now he's going to be the majority leader, which is right under the speaker. And so there's a couple of guys vying for the whip position, but the anticipation is our federal delegation will not lose any seats during this election, which is awesome because seniority means everything. If you lose one of your guys that's been in there for 10, 15, like when we lost Mary Landrieu, that was bad, okay? Because she had been in there so long, and you got to start over. So we will always want to keep our people in, Democrat or Republican, and just keep them helping us. And the longer they're in there, the better committee assignments they get. And Mary Landrieu was the chairman of the Energy Committee, so that's a big position. But we have who we have, and we have some great guys. I mean, it's very, very good. But seniority is very, very important.
Yeah, we had Alan Ellender for all of those years when we were growing up. You know,
that's right. So the Republicans are going to do their leadership elections November 15th. Okay, which is when they make sure they lock in McCarthy, Scalise, and whoever wins as the whip. The Democrats would also have a leadership election, but they're postponed that until after Thanksgiving. The Senate's going to be close race. It could be anywhere from a 50-50 split like it is now, with the Democrats retain control with Vice President Harris serving as a tiebreaker. It could go as high as 53-47 Republicans. So it's just a matter of watching, waiting and seeing. Key states are Ohio, Pennsylvania, Nevada, and Georgia. And that's going to determine who retains the majority of the Senate. So we talked about the low water in the Mississippi River. They recently had a CEO roundtable on the Mississippi River levels. The White House virtually convened a senior government officials and industry leaders in transportation logistics meeting to try to discuss the issues and try to get things moving. It's difficult, and they throw money at it to help some of these companies because it just takes that. The Corps was there, the Coast Guard. I have a list in here somewhere. The Department of Agriculture, because it's very important that they get the agriculture.
Sure.
So what happens is there's a ship that you normally load with grain, let's say. And right now, they have to maybe only load 75% of the grain on it because of the levels of the river.
Yeah.
And same thing with barges. So they have to light load them, and which costs more because you got to move more barges. You got to move more. So it's not that they can't go anywhere. It's just that they can't go fully loaded.
Or it's a bottleneck too because they can only go one or two at a time.
And then if you notice when you go over bridges and you look down the Mississippi, you'll see barges parked on the side.
Right.
Well, a lot of those are run aground now because they don't have any water on the edges, So it's a tough thing that they have to deal with.
Mother Nature.
So that's just something that they're keeping a close eye on. And let's go to page 14.
We're talking about wind energy and the status of that concept. I noticed that they just did the lease out of Lake Charles and one in Houston.
That's
too.
correct.
It's supposed to power 3 million homes.
Yeah, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, or BOEM, on Monday finalized boundaries for the two zones, which you just mentioned, one off of Lake Charles. It's a 174,000 acre area, and another 508,000 acre area near Galveston. Now that piece got a little smaller than it was before, but it's still a significant. And they're going to power. The potential to generate enough power for almost 3 million homes, which is enough to electrify the combined populations of Houston, New Orleans, and Baton Rouge with wind energy. So
right.
It's
no, that's big. I didn't realize there was going to be that much power generated from those areas. And we'll see. Right?
Now the cost to benefit ratio is nowhere near what we're talking about here because it costs so much to do this, and the return you get is a lot less. But we have to move towards that direction. Right. I'm all for it, especially if we continue to get work and we continue to build these jackets. There's going to be millions and millions of man hours
Right.
to build all the jackets and decks that have to go offshore to hold these big windmills.
But we have to be in place to supply those
That's
things,
right. And so that's what we want to do. We want to position ourselves as the supply chain for the wind energy industry and just keep rolling with our job.
Yeah, it's real interesting. Yeah, look, fossil fuels not going away tomorrow.
Look, when they can't get a barge full of oil up the channel, they're not worried about it. But when they can't get a barge with some wind energy stuff on it, it's going
It
to
might
get critical.
change.
It's going to get critical. So I think that's going to be our saving grace.
All right, David Ravelet, we appreciate the update for sure. That's Going Public. I'm Harry McCullough. We'll see you next time.